And I turned and lifted up mine eyes, and looked, and behold, there came 4 chariots out from between the 2 mountains. And the mountains were mountains of brass. In the first chariot were red horses, and in the second chariot black horses, and in the third chariot white horses, and in the fourth chariot grizzled and bay horses. Then I answered and said to the angel that talked with me, What are these, my Lord? And the angel answered and said unto me, These are the 4 spirits of the heavens, which go forth from standing before the Lord of all the earth. The black horses which are therein go forth into the north country, and the white go forth after them, and the grizzled go forth toward the south country. And the bay went forth and sought to go, that they might walk to and fro through the earth. And he said, Get you hence, walk to and fro through the earth. So they walked to and fro through the earth. Then cried he unto me, and spake unto me, saying, Behold, these that go toward the north country have quieted my spirit in the north country. And the word of the Lord came to me, saying, Take of them of the captivity, even of Heldiah, of Tobijah, and of Jediah, which are come from Babylon, and come thou the same day, and go into the house of Josiah, the son of Zephaniah. Then take silver and gold, and make crowns, and set them upon the head of Joshua, the son of Josedek, the high priest. And speaking to him, saying, Thus speaketh the Lord of hosts, saying, Behold the man whose name is the branch. And he shall grow up out of his place, and he shall build the temple of the Lord. Even he shall build the temple of the Lord, and he shall bear the glory, and shall sit and rule upon his throne. And he shall be a priest upon his throne, and the counsel of peace shall be between them both. And the crowns shall be to Helam, and to Tobijah, and to Jediah, and to him the son of Zephaniah, for a memorial in the temple of the Lord. And they that are far off shall come and build in the temple of the Lord, and ye shall know that the Lord of hosts hath sent me unto you. And this shall come to pass if you will diligently obey the voice of the Lord your God. When we started looking at the book of Zechariah, I told you then it was one of the most complex books, one of the most odd and obscure books in some of its passages. Visions, a night of 8 visions he's having, and this is another one of those examples. You look at this and you've got to be sitting there thinking, what in the world is all of this about? So we're going to cover it. As Zechariah continues his night of visions, he's now received the explanation of the flying roll and the woman in the basket in the last chapter. That 6th and 7th vision dealt with days yet future to us. So one more vision remained, and Zechariah was now receiving it. Notice then a final vision. Verse 1, And I turned and lifted up mine eyes and looked, and behold, there came 4 chariots out from between 2 mountains, and the mountains were mountains of brass. Now there are 2 components in the beginning portion of this dream, the latter of which is at present easier to decipher than the former. When the text speaks of 2 mountains, the Hebrew has a definite article before that phrase, an article that's repeated and seen in the second time those mountains are mentioned in verse 1. So these then were not just any random mountains. These were the mountains that Zechariah would have been looking at as he stood there in Jerusalem. The chariots were coming from between Mount Moriah and the Mount of Olives, and were therefore running through the valley of Jehoshaphat, a place of near constant wars, battle, and bloodshed. Well, these mountains were, in the visions, made of brass. Well, that's a symbolic way of indicating that they were firmly established. Now, this is pretty important because some years earlier, Jeremiah saw them very differently. Look at Jeremiah chapter 4, verse 24. Notice what he sees in his vision when he looks at the mountains. Jeremiah 4:24, I beheld the mountains, and lo, they trembled, and all the hills moved lightly. So Jeremiah sees those mountains trembling. Now Zechariah sees them firm. He sees them as brass. Clearly, things have changed between the time of Jeremiah's vision and Zechariah's vision. Judah was reestablished in her land, and she would be there for a very long time while God turned his anger toward the heathen nations of the world. The 4 chariots were not pleasure chariots. These were war chariots. More details will be given in the verses to come concerning that picture. Look at verse 2 and 3. In the first chariot were red horses, in the second chariot black horses, and in the third chariot white horses, and in the fourth chariot grizzled and bay horses. So in the harness of the first chariot, Zechariah saw red horses pulling the load. In the second, he saw black horses. In the third, he saw white horses. In the fourth, he saw grizzled and bay horses. And those words mean spotted and dappled. Those descriptions generally applied to pale grayish horses with spots of rings or spots of color or rings of darker color on them. So we have the rest of the vision then. But what about the meaning? What are these horses and chariots as Zechariah saw coming through the valley of Jehoshaphat, running between Mount Moriah and the Mount of Olives? The next 2 verses begin to unfold that for us, verse 4 and 5. Then I answered and said to the angel that talked with me, What are these, my Lord? And the angel answered and said unto me, These are the 4 spirits of the heavens, which go forth from standing before the Lord of all the earth. Zechariah, as he'd done throughout, asked the narrating angel for an explanation of the vision. The answer was, "These are the four spirits of the heavens which go forth from standing before the Lord of all the earth." These four spirits are not specifically mentioned anywhere else in the Bible, only here. These are four angelic beings who stand before God and go forth into the earth at his command to fulfill his purposes, and God was about to send them out. And as to their colors, a future set of horses gives us the key to this meaning. Look at Revelation chapter 6, verse 1 through 8. You're going to see horses again with the exact same colors. Revelation 6:1. "And I saw when the Lamb opened one of the seals, and I heard as it were the noise of thunder, and one of the four beasts saying, 'Come and see.' And I saw and behold a white horse. He that sat on him had a bow, and a crown was given unto him, and he went forth conquering and to conquer. And when he'd opened the second seal, I heard the second beast say, 'Come and see.' There went out another horse that was red. Power was given to him that sat thereon to take peace in the earth, and that they should kill one another. And there was given unto him a great sword. And when he'd opened the third seal, I heard a third beast say, 'Come and see.' And I beheld, lo, a black horse, and he that sat on him had a pair of balances in his hand, and heard a voice in the midst of the four beasts say, 'A measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny, and see thou hurt not the oil and the wine.' When he had opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth beast say, 'Come and see.' And I looked, and behold, a pale horse. His name that sat on him was Death, and hell followed with him. And power was given unto them over the fourth part of the earth to kill with the sword, and with hunger, and with death, and with the beasts of the earth." So 4 more horses, 4 corresponding colors. This time, though, we have spelled out for us what Zechariah seems to have understood as evidence from his lack of questions. The red horse represented bloodshed and violence, specifically in the form of people, the citizenry, turning against each other. The black horse represented famine. The white horse represented a conqueror. The pale horse represented death. So keep those descriptions in mind as we go back to the vision of Zechariah. Verse 6. "The black horses which are therein go forth into the north country. The white go forth after them, and the grizzled go forth toward the south country." Now the north country to Judah was Babylon. So this then had to be just a bit perplexing to Zechariah. As of the time of the giving of these visions and the writing of this prophecy, Babylon was conquered, having fallen to Cyrus. It was now the 2nd year of Darius, and he likely assumed that she was still subject. What he probably didn't know in that era of slow-traveling news was that just months earlier, an Armenian rebel who claimed to be the son of Nabonidus, the son of Nebuchadnezzar, and had chosen to call himself Nebuchadnezzar IV, had led Babylon in a second rebellion against Darius. There had already been another rebellion a year earlier by Nebuchadnezzar III. Darius had just crushed it. So that being the case, the black horse, famine, was certainly hitting the area. The horses that followed the black horses, the conquerors, were Darius and his general Entaphranes. They subjugated the rebels and crucified thousands of them. The grizzled, pale, spotted gray horses, Death, went south. South to Judah meant Egypt. Egypt rebelled against Darius on at least 2 occasions and was brutally reconquered by Xerxes in 485 BC. The gray southward horses then were a prophecy belonging to the generation just after that of Zechariah. Verse 7, "And the babe went forth and sought to go that they might walk to and fro through the earth. And he said, Get you hence, walk to and fro through the earth. So they walked to and fro through the earth. The bay, the pale, ringed gray horses, went forth and sought to go that they might walk to and fro through the earth. So these horses of death, splitting off from their grizzled companions, desired to walk to and fro through the earth. He, in this case Jesus, the angel of the Lord, to whom everyone has been giving answers since the 11th verse of chapter 1, gave them permission to do so. He, the Lord, said, Get you hence, walk to and fro through the earth. So they walked to and fro through the earth. Now, what particular death they sought to bring and to whom is unspecified. They knew and God knew, neither thought that Zechariah or any of us needed to know. Verse 8, Then cried he upon me and spake unto me, saying, Behold, these that go toward the north country have quieted my spirit in the north country. Looking back on the black and white horses with satisfaction, the famine and the conquerors that had fallen on rebellious Babylon, God proclaimed that they had quieted his spirit in the north country. It was God himself who proclaimed the fall of Babylon to the Medes and the Persians. Babylon's rebellion against them was a rebellion against God. If the conquerors and famine had not done their job, God in his anger would have finished the task himself. But since they did, he said, That's enough. My spirit's quieted there. Interestingly, The red horses were there and they were available, but they're not specifically shown as being sent and used. There wasn't a need for the citizenry to be turned against each other for violence and bloodshed. Everything else worked. As with any of his creation, including us, they were just to make themselves available and then be satisfied with God's direction, whether it be to stand up or to stand down. So then we see a future glory. Look at verses 9 and 10. And the word of the Lord came to me, saying, Take of them of the captivity, even of Heldai, of Tobijah, and of Jediah, which are come from Babylon, and come down the same day, and go into the house of Josiah, the son of Zephaniah. Now, verses 9 through 13 make up one long sentence, one of the longest sentences in the Bible. In this first portion of the sentence, we find that the visions of Zechariah are done, and that God is now going to present he's going to narrate a present expectation he had of Zechariah. Some visitors had come to Jerusalem from Babylon. Heldai, called Helam in verse 14, Tobijah, and Jediah. They were bringing a gift to be used toward the new temple and the furnishings. Verse 11, he said, Then take silver and gold and make crowns and set them upon the head of Joshua, the son of Josedek, the high priest. And when you think of a priest in Scripture, even a high priest, crown is not the word that normally comes to mind. This is, in fact, the only reference to a crown and a priest in the same verse anywhere in the Bible. Further adding to the starkness of this juxtaposition is the fact that it was crowns, plural, that were to be made of the silver and gold and set on the head of Joshua the high priest. Now, as we're about to see, Joshua was going to be used as a symbol of one far greater than himself. Verse 12, And speak unto him, saying, Thus speaketh the Lord of hosts, saying, Behold the man whose name is the branch, and he shall grow up out of his place, and he shall build the temple of the Lord. Zechariah and the entourage of Jews from Babylon bearing gold for the crowns were to go and visit Joshua the high priest. They were to make crowns, set them upon his head, and say, Thus speaketh the Lord of hosts, saying, Behold the man whose name is the branch, and he shall grow up out of his place, and he shall build the temple of the Lord. They were not calling Joshua the branch. Joshua knew it. He'd already heard this title once in the prophecy of Zechariah. Zechariah 3:8. Hear now, O Joshua the high priest, thou and thy fellows that sit before thee, for they are men wondered at. For behold, I will bring forth my servant, the branch. Now, when we covered that verse, I told you that they, the men of the priesthood, including Joshua, were described as men wondered at. And that phrase means that they themselves were wonders of God, a sign of things to come. And they were. A restoration of the priesthood after 70 years of national captivity could only have been a miracle. And in this case, it was a miracle that pointed to a far greater miracle yet to come. That greater miracle than the restoration of the priesthood pointed to, in the words of the last phrase of the verse, was, For behold, I bring forth my servant, the branch. Now, this wasn't Zerubbabel. Zerubbabel was already on the scene. The branch, all caps, was let to come. The identity of the branch was given to us by Jeremiah. He used the same word, samak, for branch, just as Zechariah did. Here this is. Jeremiah 23:5. Behold, the days come, saith the Lord, that I will raise unto David a righteous branch, and a king shall reign and prosper, and shall execute judgment and justice in the earth. In his days Judah shall be saved, and Israel shall dwell safely. And this is his name whereby he shall be called the Lord our righteousness. So this then, the branch, the Lord our righteousness, the king who will reign and prosper and execute judgment and justice in the earth, is Jesus the Messiah. These words spoken to Joshua were a promise of the coming Messiah, which, as Jeremiah saw, was a promise of the first advent of Christ to Israel, followed by the second advent, which will spread into all the earth. So Joshua was now hearing for the second time about the Messiah to come, the Lord Jesus Christ. Here in Zechariah 6:12, we find these words, He shall grow up out of his place, and he shall build the temple of the Lord. Now the Jews presently knew of two temples, Solomon's temple that had been destroyed, and Zerubbabel's temple that was just then being rebuilt. That temple would later be renovated entirely by Herod, though it was still considered by the Jews to be the second temple. The temple that Joshua was hearing of was neither Solomon's temple nor Zerubbabel's temple. The temple that the Messiah would build would be the temple of the Lord. And while some make a decent case from Matthew 16:18 for this being a reference to the church, that doesn't fit the context that follows the information that it gives. Look at verse 13. Even he shall build the temple of the Lord, and he shall bear the glory, and shall sit and rule upon his throne. And he shall be a priest upon his throne, and the counsel of peace shall be between them both. Nowhere in the history of the church has the Lord sat and ruled upon his throne and have been a priest upon his throne. This refers to the millennial kingdom and to the millennial temple. In the Jewish context of Zechariah 6, it fits perfectly. Jesus will indeed rule from the temple in Jerusalem, holding the dual offices of king and priest over all the earth. He is the only king priest. There is no other. Now notice it says that the counsel of peace shall be between them both. When he's talking about Christ being king and priest, what does it mean when it says the counsel of peace shall be between them both? Well, in king and priest, you have church and state. How often do church and state agree perfectly together? Doesn't happen. But in this case, church, temple, and state are going to agree perfectly together. The counsel of peace will be between them both because one rules over them both. The king is the priest, and the priest is the king. So now you know why they were to make crowns, plural, to sit on the head of Joshua. He wouldn't forever wear the mitre, the priestly version of a crown, if you will, and the glorious crown of the king that was temporarily set on his head. But Jesus, whom he represented in type, would and will forever be crowned as both our eternal priest and our eternal king. Verse 14, and the crowns shall be to Helem and to Tobijah and to Jedaiah and to him the son of Zephaniah for a memorial in the temple of the Lord. Now after the crowns were set on the head of Joshua, they were to be taken off and then displayed in a conspicuous spot in the temple as a memorial to the three men who gave the offering, and to Hen, the son of Zephaniah. This is another name for Joshua the high priest. Just like we have different names, they had different names. And that way they would remember to be looking for the coming king priest, and they would know to remind others to be looking for him as well. Verse 15, and they that are far off shall come and build in the temple of the Lord, and ye shall know that the Lord of hosts hath sent me unto you, and this shall come to pass if ye will diligently obey the voice of the Lord your God. Now, as chapter 6 comes to a close, the scope and the audience widens out dramatically. Correlating these words about they that are far off, coming and building in the temple of the Lord with the words of Isaiah, we realize that it's the Gentiles being spoken of. Isaiah 60, verse 10. And the sons of strangers shall build up thy walls, and their kings shall minister unto thee. For in my wrath I smote thee, but in my favor have I had mercy on thee. In the millennial kingdom, it won't just be Jews constructing the temple. It'll be all believers in Christ, including the Gentiles who have for the past 2,000 years made up the largest portion of his believers. So these words then are to the Jews of the latter days, the ye of the verse who would see these coming Gentile brethren, not just to a few men of Zechariah's day who were then standing in a newly constructed temple. Now the ending words of the chapter, and ye shall know that the Lord of hosts hath sent me unto you. And this shall come to pass if ye will diligently obey the voice of the Lord your God, presents both a conclusion and a qualification, and in that order. The conclusion was, and ye shall know that the Lord of hosts hath sent me unto you. This will be the end of the story for the Jews. They would finally know that God had indeed sent his Messiah, his Son. The qualification, though, was, and this shall come to pass if ye will diligently obey the voice of the Lord your God. When you say that word if, this is going to be really hard. And I know that may take an advanced knowledge of ancient civilizations and languages. You know what the word if means? If. If. It means it's a possibility. It could happen or it won't happen, and it rests on you. Notice what he said. And this shall come to pass if ye will diligently obey the voice of the Lord your God. So in this, we once again see the God-given free will of man front and center. In other words, the Jews will not have to believe and receive any of this. They will not be forced to believe and receive any of this. They will choose to believe and receive it. Now let's look at both sides of the coin. Was it an absolute, and will it be an absolute free will choice on their part? Yes or no? Did God already know that they would choose it? Yeah, absolutely. And that's the way it always works. God sets a legitimate choice before them. You can believe it or not believe it. You can receive it or not receive it. You do believe it. Here's what's going to happen. Your Messiah is going to come to you. I'm going to unfold all my promises. If you go ahead and believe, to put your faith in me, I'm going to give you all this. He gives them a choice. But he already knows they're going to make that choice because he just so happens to be omnipresent and all through time, all at one time. So he already knows. But it was a free will choice, and it always will be a free will choice. God will not drag anyone kicking and screaming in his plan. He lays out the choice, and he lets us make it. So the world of Zechariah's day would see these coming chariots, and they would recoil because it meant doom and destruction for all of them. The Jews, the latter days, would see something different. They would see the crowns, and they would rejoice because they will finally have both their king and their priest all at once